In our parable today, Jesus gives us several groups to talk about. We have the group that was hired at the beginning of the day, in the early morning, and they worked from morning till evening. And they decided that they would work for a denarius, for not a lot of money, but enough money that it would feed their family for that day. But as we read, we heard that the landowner went and he hired even more. He hired some at the 6th hour, the 9th hour. And there were even some that he waited until the 11th hour to hire. Now I want us to make sure that we understand that Jesus doesn't suggest that the landowner hired these people because he was desperate to harvest his grapes. Instead, I would like for us to view this as the landowner hired the extra people just because they needed a job. But then the story goes on, and it's time to get paid. And the end of the day is here, and the landowner tells his foreman to go ahead and start paying these individuals for their work. And he said, start with the ones that came last and end up with the ones who have been here all day. And the first ones that only worked an hour received their denarius. They got the full day's pay for 1 hour's work. And can you imagine those that have been there all day? They were probably talking amongst themselves, saying, well, he gave them 1 day's pay. Well, he'll probably give us 2 days' pay. Or maybe 3 days' pay. We've been here all day. Maybe he'll give us a whole week's worth of pay. But when the time came for them to be paid, they were paid the same. 1 denarius, 1 day's wage. And they began to complain to the landowner. In verses 13 to 15, it says, the landowner responded to him and said, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Didn't you agree with me to work for 1 denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. It is my desire to give to this last just as much as to you. Isn't it lawful for me to do what I want with what I own? Or is your eye evil because I am good? In the translation Christine read, it says, or are you jealous because I am generous? And I think we could say that they were jealous, right? These workers that had been there all day thought that they deserved more. But I think if we look closely at their complaint, they didn't really want more. They were mad that the landowner had made the latecomers equal to them. In verse 12, they said, these last have spent 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have bore the burden of the day and the scorching heat. I think we can identify with that, can't we? Most of us have worked hard, and we expect to receive the benefits of our hard work. It isn't that we want others to be hungry or homeless or without medical care, but we expect to be rewarded for our work, and we expect to receive more than those that don't accomplish as much as we do. It's kind of like fair is fair, right? I once knew a young man back in Texas who received a Social Security check every month. He was only about 30 years old. But you see, all of his life he had been doing drugs and drinking and partying, and it all caught up with him, and he became disabled. He fried his brain. And he received each and every month a check from the government because of his disability. And I have to be honest, it kind of upset me. You see, he met with the pastor, and the pastor tried tried to work with him to manage his money so that he wouldn't blow it right when he received it. I don't know whether he was buying drugs or what he was spending his money on, and that's not for me to decide. All I know is I didn't have much contact with this person until he came looking for more help before the month was through. He was always seemed to be looking for a hangout. See, that system makes me upset. A system that will pay a monthly stipend to a person who has been completely irresponsible all of their life frustrates me. You see, this person is receiving a Social Security payment from taxes collected from you and from me, from the butchers and the bakers and the candlestick makers. Make sure you don't pay attention. You see, when we give our tax money to the government, we're expecting them to take care of us in our old age. But instead, we're mad because they're giving this money to individuals that really don't deserve it. They have really made no contribution at all for their entire life. It just doesn't seem fair. And I didn't like it then, and I can't say that I like it now. So I understand how these all-day workers must have felt in Jesus' parable. But you see, this parable is not about Social Security. It's not even about money. Yes, Jesus does use money and wages to make his point. It's kind of like when the rich young man came to Jesus. He goes, Jesus, what do I need to do to inherit heaven? And Jesus told him, give all that you have to the poor and come and follow me. But what happened was that rich young man, he went away sad and unhappy because he was very wealthy. And then there's Peter, good old Peter. We've been talking about him for several weeks. But Peter goes up to the Lord and says, we've already done this. We have given you everything. We left all that we had and we followed you. What will be our reward? And Jesus told Peter that he and the disciples would be richly rewarded. Richly rewarded. And then he told Peter and the disciples this parable. Now the meaning of this parable is really very simple. Jesus had told Peter and the 12 that they would receive rich rewards for their discipleship. But in this parable, he says that other people whom the disciples and probably you and I would think as unworthy, will also receive those rich rewards. You see, the rewards would have little to do with what people have achieved. The rewards instead would have everything to do with God's generosity. And then Jesus ended the parable by saying that the last will be first, and the first will be last. We're not sure we like that, do we? After all, we go to church, we put money in the offering, we live upright lives, we're good Christians, good citizens, good parents, good. When God hosts an award ceremony in heaven, we may not be in first place, but we're thinking of being up on that podium to receive our prize. And we would be sorely disappointed to learn that druggie was standing up there with us, wouldn't we? Fair is fair. We're really thinking, if that druggie guy, if he gets into heaven, well, really, he should live, on the low-rent district, on the other side of the tracks, right? But that's the problem, folks. In heaven, there is no low-rent district. There is no other side of the tracks. I think it's interesting that when I heard that sure that if I ask you to raise your hands, most of you, when you heard the reading of this parable, you were thinking about being, and put yourself as that all-day worker. And I bet none of you identified yourself as one of the latecomers. We think of ourselves as deserving, and other persons as less deserving. We think of ourselves as all-day workers, and we don't want God to make 1-hour workers equal to us. You know, we would probably prefer to not have anything to do with that 1-hour worker. But I think we all need to stop and think for just a minute. I think we all need to stop and think that, and understand that we may not be that all-day worker. We might be that 5-hour worker or that 3-hour worker. We may even be that 1-hour worker. Stop and think about this for a minute. What have you done for Jesus?